Welcome to another edition of Journey of Hope. Stories of people, real people, on the journey of life. People encountering tragic accidents, traumatic injuries, and different challenges along the way. Our special guests today are Ann and Scott Wilcox from Morro Bay, California. Scott and Ann, it's good to have you here.
Thank you.
We've got people from around the world that are watching, but we want to learn a little bit about your background. Where are you from?
I grew up in Michigan in Grand Rapids, stayed there until age 24 when I'd graduated from college, and I got tired of the Michigan weather, decided I needed to go somewhere where it was warmer, so I applied for and was hired for a job in Laverne, California, Southern California, and came out here in 1979, and I was here ever since.
Okay, what did you take in school?
I majored in trade technical education with a major in automotive technology, and I came out and was an automotive instructor at both the high school and community college levels for 31 years.
For 31 years of education, okay. Ann, what about you? Where are you from?
I'm born and raised California, Pasadena, California.
All right, and did you have any schooling there?
Yep, did all my schooling here. I originally was a floral designer for about 20 years and then met Scott, and when I met Scott, he said, "You want to do that for the rest of your life?" And I said, probably not. So I went back to school, got a teaching credential, and then taught elementary school for 17 years.
Okay, where'd you guys meet?
A student of mine at the high school worked at a flower shop that Ann worked at as a manager, and he said, "There's this lady at the flower shop that I need to introduce you to." His girlfriend also was employed at that flower shop, so they set the two of us up on a date.
This is one of your students?
This is one of my students.
Arranged a date with her, and
Yep.
Where'd you go on your first date?
She thought we were going hiking. I said we're going rappelling. We went out and did some rappelling on some rocks out by Wrightwood, California.
On your first date?
I said, "What's that?"
Yeah, I was going to say, did you know anything about rappelling?
No, nothing.
No kidding. Where'd you go?
We went out to the Mormon Rocks out by Wrightwood, California, and spent the day out there rappelling. Ann thought we were going to go for a hike until I hooked her to a rope and said, "You're going to go down the side of this big hill."
Oh, man. He put the trust to you right away, but it must have worked somehow. You know, he never let go of the rope. He's been had you ever since.
Yep.
Okay, well, tell us what's been happening in your life, because you've had a fascinating journey. First of all, how has your health been, Ann?
My health's been good.
Has it all
Praise
along?
God. Yep,
No?
it's been good.
Praise God is right. I mean, everything is going well so far.
Yeah.
All right. So tell us about you and your journey. You first of all, you were a teacher where? The last...
I was a teacher at Bonita High School in Laverne, California for 31 years. Same high school, same classroom, my entire career.
31 years. You were part of the establishment then.
I was, yeah.
Wow.
Enjoyed my job a lot. Never had any health issues at all. I had 250 sick days stored up when I retired. Never missed a day of work.
200, you almost had a year, 256 days.
Teachers are 186 days a year. I had 1.5 years of sick days, never used.
Never used it. So healthy all of your life then.
Until I retired.
And when you retired. So what happened when you retired?
Well, when we retired in June of 2010, we sold our house in Southern California and moved to a second home we had up in Morro Bay, California on the coast.
So you were living down here somewhere? Where were you at?
We were living in Claremont, California,
Okay.
about 30 miles east of here of Loma Linda.
Okay.
So we sold that house, moved up by the ocean where it was cooler, and proceeded to go to a new doctor because we had different medical coverage at that point. And first thing the doctor did during the physical was listen to my heart. And he said, "How long has your heart been out of rhythm?" And I said, "It's never been out of rhythm." This was within 2 weeks of my retirement.
2 weeks after you retired, you're going for just a general physical and kind of tapping things off and biting off and
Exactly.
starting a new chapter in your life.
Exactly.
And he said, "How long have you had this irregularity?"
And I said, "I've never had it before." Well, I had it then.
Okay, so what was going on?
Well, I had atrial fibrillation, which is an irregular heartbeat. Not a life-threatening.
Did he think you'd had it for quite a while?
No, because medical record-wise, Kaiser had done physicals on me every year. There was no evidence of me ever having had it before.
So
Maybe-
it's after retirement,
maybe the
something
stress
started
of
up.
retirement,
Yeah,
yes.
31 years, now
That's
you're not
right.
going back to work.
Nothing
A
to
little
do.
bit of unusual stress there.
Yeah, I think God had some plans for me. He wanted me to keep occupied for those first
Right.
couple of years.
So what did he do? I mean, what were their suggestions?
Well, the suggestion from the regular primary care doctor was to send me to a cardiologist, which he did locally up in San Luis, again about 5 hours north of here. And so the San Luis cardiologist said, "We'll put you on some medications." And so they put me on several heart medications to try to slow the heart down, make the rhythm better.
And usually the medication like that, for most people,
Usually
it'll
yes.
take effect. Sometimes it takes a few weeks or so.
Yeah.
They put you on several. You mean several at the same time, or one?
No, they
after?
put me on one, and I had some pretty severe adverse reactions to the first one. In fact, I was having some chest pains and some numbness in my arms, and the cardiologist said, no, it can't be the medication. He said, I give this much, 3 times this much to ladies in their 70s. It can't be the medication. I said, it's the medication. He said, no, I think we need to double it.
There's something else. So he's going to double the medication.
So he doubled it on about a Wednesday, and on Friday I was in the emergency room at the hospital in San Luis. Thought I was having a heart attack, thought I was having a stroke, both at the same time. They couldn't find anything wrong. I said,
are you having chest pains at this point?
Exactly.
Severe chest pains.
Never had any of this before.
But,
in fact,
I mean,
a month.
weren't they monitoring you? I mean, did they, when you go in?
Yeah, when I went in, but no, they weren't monitoring me while I was at home taking this medication. And I was in good shape. A month before that, we'd been at Mammoth, California. We'd hiked 30 miles at altitude. I mean, I was in good shape. I worked out my entire life, and suddenly they put me on a medication, and I've got these side effects. So he said,
you're
well,
feeling rotten,
exactly.
to say the least. Okay.
So he doubled it. I was in the hospital in the emergency room, I think, on a Friday, and again on a Sunday.
You mean after they doubled it, you really knocked you for the
within
loop?
3 days, exactly.
You're at the ER, and they put you in the hospital. And what are they doing?
They did some tests and said, we're not sure what it is. You're not having a heart attack. You're not having a stroke. And 3 days later, it got so bad I was back again, and so then the doctor decided he'd try me on a second medication. So I took the second heart medication and took one and called them up and said, this is worse than the other one. And they said, maybe you need to go to the emergency. What are you doing right now? I said, I'm at the gym working out. She said, well, maybe you need to go home and come to the hospital. Well, I said, this will be the last one of these I take. So then they tried a third one, and the third one really worked reasonably well.
But to stabilize your heart.
To stabilize the heart, yeah. Didn't cure the problem, just kind of stabilized my heart. So at that point in time, by February of the next year, it'd been about 7 months.
After retirement.
Exactly. Not even at the end of my first school year of retirement. I decided we need to do something surgically. There's a procedure called a heart ablation that can be done, and so I went in to see
read about it and did some research on it.
Saw the cardiologist. I said, I think we need to do some surgery. He said, I agree. He said, I'll send you in for a referral. But our HMO up in Central California doesn't include anything down here as part of their treatment network. So the electrophysiologist they recommended was out in the valley, Fresno or Visalia. Very inexperienced man, and I said, I don't want him working on my heart. And so then they sent me another name of another gentleman, Dr. Nemeny. Never heard of the guy before. He was at a place called White Memorial Hospital.
Ah, yes, one of our hospitals.
It seemed like the Adventists were going to start helping Mr. Wilcox out. And so we went down to see Dr. Nemeny after a trip down to Florida and got back and saw him. I was down visiting my mother like I do every year in the spring. And
she's in Florida.
She's in Florida. So we saw Dr. Nemeny, and he said, yes, we need to do an ablation on your heart. And there's about a 70% chance that we can correct your atrial fibrillation, which puts me at a very high risk of a stroke, and that's why we wanted to address this, especially at my age. I was only 56.
And you've been in good health up until this point.
Excellent health, yep.
Okay.
And so in March, I go down to White Memorial, and Dr. Nemeny does the procedure on me and burns the nerves in my heart and releases me from the hospital the next day, and my heart's back in rhythm. And when I got home, I began to experience chest pains. Thought I was having some heart attack issues or who knew what, and the next morning I was back in the emergency room at White Memorial, and they readmitted me to the hospital, kept me there for 2 more days, and they said, you were our worst case scenario after an ablation.
Really?
This is the beginning of my odyssey of being in the worst case scenario.
You're in the 1%, huh?
I'm in the 1%.
Really?
Yep.
And this is just the first time?
This was just the first time. So he said, there's nothing we can do for about 6 months. We need to let your heart heal and see what it's going to do. But it became obvious within a couple of months that it was getting worse. I then began to develop some tachycardia symptoms. I'd go to the gym. My heart would be running 137 beats per minute before I even stepped on a treadmill.
Before you started working out?
Yeah, it would run up as high as 180 to 200 beats per minute.
Man,
and so by August of that same year, Dr. Nemeny says, we need to do another ablation on you. He says, we need to do a little touch-up. And I said, you make me feel like a used car.
Touch-up, huh?
He says, no. He says, it'll be real simple. He says, I can correct your problem.
Well, that's better than an extreme makeover.
That's right. That's right. So I went back in again in August, 5 months after the first ablation, after having had so many problems. Dr. Nemeny, again at White Memorial, did the surgery on me. I've been in normal sinus rhythm ever since.
Oh, that's wonderful news, but it took a long time. And they did tell you that it was the worst case scenario that you ever had.
Absolutely, yeah.
And some other occasions you found out you were in the small 1% the way you're reacting.
Yep.
Okay, but you've been really up until this point, you've been healthy and hiking and climbing and swimming and doing all kinds of active sports and never having any problem.
Never had a problem.
What are you thinking about when all of a sudden your husband, all these kind of problems going through, looks like we're going to have a heart attack? Well, how are you relating
I was
to
just
this?
saying, praise God, that we were retired. I couldn't imagine going through all of this and still having to try to work and have that pressure.
Now, had you already
on.
retired?
We both retired at the same time.
Both retired at the same time. Okay, so then this is your first year of retirement.
This is my first year of retirement, so in August, which was the end of my first year of retirement, I go in, Dr. Nemeny does this second ablation, and I was their best case scenario. I went back in the normal rhythm, had no side effects, got out of the hospital the next day. Everything was perfect. They kept me on anticoagulants, on Coumadin until November to make sure everything was okay. So in November of 2011, this is 1 year after I retire, he says, you've got less than a 1% chance of going out of rhythm. I'm going to take you off Coumadin. You're going to be fine. And indeed, I've been ever since.
Wow, that's praise the
So
Lord.
in January of 2012, I go into my primary care doctor and I get a physical, and I said, Dr. Vaughn, I says, don't tell me anything bad. You've made this last year of my life a real miserable one. I said, it's been all your fault.
Stay away from the doctors, huh?
He says, oh, we won't find anything wrong. So I get my normal physical, blood test, and so on, and he calls me up about a week later and he says, your PSA is elevated, 8.6 to be exact, and 0 to 4 is considered normal. I didn't know much about PSAs at that point in time. He says, we need to do some more testing, and they did. And it kind of pointed towards the fact that I might have prostate cancer. This is 3 months after my heart gets straightened out.
And still with just short of a year of retirement.
This
wow,
is now
what a
in my
start. What a way to
second
get
year.
started.
Yep.
31 years in work and no problems.
I know, and I'm thinking,
1 year in retirement and everything's falling apart.
Yep.
So what did they finally find?
Well, they sent me to the urologist. The urologist did a biopsy, confirmed that I had prostate cancer.
Right there, the first time.
Had a Gleason 6, Gleason 7, which is a moderately aggressive form of prostate cancer. And again, sudden adverse Mr. 1% reactions. He did a biopsy on me, says he's done these on 1,000 different men. Within 4 hours, I was having such severe bleeding and side effects that I was in shock. The ambulance came.
You're taking this 1% too far.
Yes, the
Really?
fire truck
So,
came to the house.
Severe bleeding.
Yep.
Did the ambulance come and get you?
And the fire truck. The guys I work out with from the gym came, and I'm laying on the floor, and the guy comes in, he says, Scott, how you doing? And his name was Scott, and I said, I don't think I'm doing too well. I said, I think you better get me to the hospital. So they tried to start an IV, couldn't. My veins had collapsed. My blood pressure was like 65/30. This is from a simple prostate biopsy.
You are special.
I'm special.
That. Less than the 1%. Okay,
So then the nurse picks me, or then the ambulance driver comes. They put me in the ambulance, and as I'm laying in this ambulance driving 12 miles back into San Luis, I'm looking up at these bright lights in the ambulance, and I say to the nurse, the attendant in there, I says, am I going to die? She says, nobody dies in my ambulance.
All right.
So I get down into the emergency, and they ended up admitting me into the hospital for a couple days. The doctor came in, and he said, you know, this is my fault. And I said, it's not your fault. I said, it happens. He said, I've done 1,000 of these. He says, I've only had this happen twice. He said, you're Mr. 1%. That's where I got that name from. And then the ambulance driver lady came in, and I said to Ann, I said, that's the lady I asked if I was going to die. And she says, I couldn't believe you said that. So the lady came in, she said, how you doing? I says, I'm okay. And Ann says, did he really say, is he going to die? She says, yeah, but we always tell everybody, nobody dies in our ambulance because they don't pronounce them dead until they get to the hospital.
They don't die. They're pronounced dead after they
right.
leave. She didn't add that, fortunately.
No, she didn't tell me that in the hospital. So
Okay.
I proceed to find out the results, and right away the urologist wants to do surgery. But in doing a little bit of research after the fact, I found surgery may not be my best option. But one of the things I've learned later, and I learned it from you almost immediately when I came to Loma Linda, and that is, nobody comes to Loma Linda by accident.
That's right.
God has his hand in what's going on, and God was using me, I believe, through these circumstances to reach some other folks. And so what happened was we came home, and Ann called a neighbor lady down the street, a 71-year-old lady with no other men in the house, not married, said, Scott's got prostate cancer, and she proceeded to say, I've got a book down here Scott needs to read. And it was a book about prostate cancer treatment.
You mean this lady
Loma
that
Linda.
wasn't married, no men in the house?
Exactly.
And she got a book on prostate cancer?
Yep, it's the one Bob Marchini wrote that they used to promote the Proton program here at Loma Linda.
How did she ever find the book, get the book?
Apparently she had a friend that had some prostate issues, and she'd said she wanted to read the book, and so she took it home, set it on her bookshelf.
And this was Bob Marchini's book,
This
You
was
Can
Bob
Beat Prostate
Marchini's
Cancer.
book. Exactly.
Unbelievable. So she brought it over to you.
Yep, so I read this book. I read it within probably 3 or 4 hours and told Ann, I said, surgery is not my best bet. I said, I need to find out if I can get admitted down to Loma Linda and get into this program. But we had an HMO, and we're way far away from Loma Linda in terms of our treatment
Outside
network.
the district of
Exactly.
coverage, right?
Yep. But because I had this history of all these severe adverse reactions to both medications and to surgeries, and even procedures like the prostate biopsy, I wrote my own letter of medical necessity, took it into my primary care doctor, said, will you sign this and send it into the insurance company? He said, absolutely. He said, but they're not going to approve you to go down there. He said, they'll tell you that they can do something locally. I said, well, let's send it anyway, and in the meantime, I wrote a 42-page written appeal. And again, off we went to Florida to visit my mother. A year before that, I got the news I was going to White Memorial. Well, we're down in Florida, and I start calling my HMO saying, have you made up your mind? Have you made up your mind? They said, we've got 10 days. We'll let you know. And on the 7th day, they called and said, we've approved you to go outside the treatment network down to Loma Linda. I was the first person
to go outside.
they ever sent to Loma Linda. Yep.
God had his hand over you, no question about it.
Absolutely. Didn't know it at the time yet, but he certainly did. So I called from Florida, called Loma Linda, the Proton department, and I said, how soon can you get me in? I'm going to be flying into Ontario, which is where we go in and out of, 10 miles from the hospital. I said, I'll be there on February the 28th. How quickly can you get me in? They said, we can get you in 2 days to see Dr. Grover. I said, great, I will be there. So all my records were sent down. I saw Dr. Grover probably on March the 1st-ish. And by March 19th, I was in treatment back down here for 10 weeks.
Unbelievable.
Yep.
So you began treatment. Now, so did you come by yourself or did you come with him?
Oh yeah, I came
You
with him.
came, all right. So what were you, how was your treatment down here? And we're talking about how many years ago now?
This was 3 years. I began 3 years ago, probably in 2 days.
Okay,
It's been
3 years ago. So you come down here, and did you stay in one of our local homes, or did...
We had, like I'd said, we'd lived here for a long time, so we had a friend that lived 7 miles away, so he offered his house for us to stay at. And so we stayed there, and I brought my Harley Davidson down. I'd drive it down to treatment every morning at 8 o'clock. I'd leave, I'd be at LA Fitness, I'd work out till noon. This went on for 10 weeks.
Every day.
4 days a week, yeah.
Were you sick while you were here?
You know, by the 3rd week, I got some of the typical side effects most men do, and that's urinary frequency, because I was drinking 96 ounces of water a day. That's enough to make anybody frequent.
96. Well,
Yep.
I would think you could be very frequent
And
there.
then I got some urinary urgency, and that's all I got. I met with Stella, the nutritionist. She monitored my protein intake. I was in good shape coming in. I had absolutely no fatigue. I had absolutely no other side effects, none.
So what were you doing? You were working out during this whole time? Don't forget you were supposed to be sick now.
Well, I was working out. I painted part of the house for the guy that we were staying at. We rode the motorcycle almost 2,000 miles while we were
While you were here?
While we were here.
Okay,
Yep.
What were you doing during this time, Ann?
Oh, I'd go to the gym and work out with him, and
Okay.
and while he was painting, I'd lay out by the pool.
Keeping actively involved.
Yep.
Did you participate in any of the other programs we had
We'd
here?
go to every Tuesday night potluck, every Wednesday night Drayson Center, at that time, I think it was Thursday, Dr. Carol Davis has Proton support group meetings. We would go to every one of those, absolutely.
So, yeah, for our listening audience, we have various activities that are part of the healing process. I always tell our patients, the treatments take place in gantry 1, 2, or 3, or the horizontal beam, but healing is a process. And what always sets Loma Linda apart from all of the other proton centers, there's 14 here now in this country. Loma Linda is the very first one. But what separates Loma Linda and the James Slater Proton Treatment Research Center is its emphasis on whole person care, mentally, physically, spiritually, and emotionally. And so we have a lot of different activities structured, and it sounded like you were getting in on those. You got the Tuesday night potluck and the Wednesday educational support group, and occasionally we had some other clinical support groups, and we had a Thursday night restaurant tour. And you were apparently working out on this fitness. We have a Drayson Center that our patients take a care of. So this was 3 years ago. So when you came, what was your PSA, just for our listening audience?
My PSA at that time was 8.6.
Okay, 8.6, a little bit high.
Yep.
Normal's around 3 to 4.
Correct.
But when it gets around 4, you need to kind of start watching it. But it was 8.6.
Yes.
Okay. And now we're 3 years later. What is it now?
It's down to 0.6. It's down about 94%.
0.6.
Yep, exactly.
Okay. So when you left here, you left here 3.5 years ago. Was that the end of your experience here with Loma Linda?
No, it wasn't. We got home and immediately went back to the gym, and some of the folks that I work out with said, "You look pretty good." And I said, "Well, how do you expect me to look?" I'd been laying out by the pool at this house and working out, and I said, "Well, we thought your hair was going to be gone, you'd be all fatigued." And they said, "You look better than when you left." I said, "Absolutely." I said, "The Loma Linda is an amazing place. It's just an amazing place." And then when I went in to see the urologist who follows me up north, great guy, 4 months post-treatment, his assistant came in and she began to ask me, "How are you doing?" She said, "Are you having any side effects?" And she began to list all the possible side effects: incontinence, impotence, burning, all of those kinds of things. I kept saying, "No, no, 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 no." When about she got to the 5th one, I stopped her and I said, "I have no side effects whatsoever." And she looked like I wasn't telling her the truth. And so I asked her this question, and this speaks volumes about the proton program. I said, "How many of the doctor's patients that have had either surgery or conventional radiation come in to see you 4 months post-treatment and tell you they have no side effects?" She did not even skip a beat. She said none.
Wow.
And so I knew at that point.
And your story is typical of most of the patients that come here, yeah.
Absolutely.
Minimal or no side effects whatsoever.
Absolutely.
Okay, so we're talking about 3.5 years ago, but you weren't content just to go home and forget about Loma Linda. What have you been doing?
Well, you know, having come to Loma Linda and getting cancer has turned out to be probably one of the best experiences in my life.
Okay, I hope the listening audience heard that.
Yes.
Getting cancer, coming to Loma Linda, is one of the best experiences of your life. And I've heard that from many different people, like almost getting cancer was a blessing.
It is.
And why do you say that?
Well, the experience at Loma Linda and what God was planning to use me for through this experience has turned out to be one of the best experiences in my life. And about 6 months after my treatment ended, I contacted Deb Hickey at the Brotherhood of the Balloon, which is a proton support organization that supports Loma Linda quite heavily. And I'd said, "Deb, I want to get on your reference list. I want to try to help some other men to learn about Loma Linda, because less than 1% of all prostate patients are treated with protons nationwide."
Right.
And so at 6 months, she said, "Yeah, I'll put you on our list." And I also contacted you, and you put me on the reference list here. So I was on 2 reference lists. In addition to that, I go to the local prostate cancer support group meetings up there in San Luis and bring Loma Linda literature and DVDs every time I come. Well, God was going to use me. I didn't know it at that point in time, but some people have even called it a ministry at this point, because I seem to get calls now anywhere from once a week to several times a month from all over the United States. I've met men at this local prostate cancer group. One guy came to the meeting, was sitting next to me. Another fellow was sitting on the other side of him who I'd referred to Loma Linda. He was going to go down and start within a month. I'd met him at the meeting. This gentleman sitting between us had a yellow tablet with a bunch of questions on it. As we go through the group, this gentleman in your seat begins to tell his story. And this gentleman said, "I came here tonight because I wanted to learn about Loma Linda and proton beam therapy." And the gentleman that runs the meeting that was sitting next to me says, "Then you need to listen to Scott's story." They've gotten to know me real well up there in the San Luis area. And this gentleman says, "Is he Scott Wilcox from Morro Bay? I was going to call him tomorrow." This happens all the time.
No kidding.
And so
I think you've referred 20 or 25 people.
Probably.
So it's been a tremendous ministry. How have you been in all of this?
It's just amazing. I see how passionate he is about it, and it's like we plan everything around. Nope, can't miss my meeting. Got to go to my meeting. it definitely is, God has placed it upon his heart.
And you're maintaining
to-
contact with some of these people.
I
Yes.
do. There's a number of them that we've kept in contact with, and each time I refer men down here, because we're only 5 hours away, I try to come down and either meet with them at a potluck or at a Drayson Center meeting and just introduce myself, because I usually spend a lot of time on the phone with these folks and follow up, and I know how they feel when you sit in a doctor's office and they come in and say, you have cancer. The anxiety and the stress that that generates is not good.
Well, if you were to look into the camera and talk to some patients now, they've just been diagnosed with cancer, what would you tell them?
I would say you need to do your research first. You need to talk to your doctor, but absolutely look at proton beam therapy as one of the top options for your treatment, because the cure rate for protons is at least as good as or better than surgery or conventional radiation. And if I were to choose a place to have that done, I would pick Loma Linda, because they are by far and away the most experienced proton center in the world.
Yeah,
in the
for
United States.
our listening audience, Loma Linda is the very first place in the world where you have proton in a clinical setting. I mean, they've used protons for 60, 70 years, but 25 years ago, this is our 25th anniversary. 25 years ago, we started. We were the only one in the world. Now there's 14 here in the United States. They have them over in Europe. They have one over in Asia. But what is always going to make Loma Linda different and the James Slater proton treatment and research different is its emphasis on whole person care, mentally, physically, spiritually, and emotionally. We don't think it makes any sense for you to be successfully treated for your tumor, only to have you go home and hear, because of imbalance in your life, that they had some kind of a stroke or a tumor or a heart attack, worse, you had a heart attack. You know, living in a nursing home in the last few years of your life, that's not what it's all about.
Yep.
Quality of life, and that's what Loma Linda is all about, making man whole. And I can see that the two of you have been blossoming and shining since your experience here at Loma Linda.
Yep.
For our listening audience, you know, Ann and Scott are wonderful examples of people that are not only survivors but thrivers. Give God a chance with your life. He's got plans for you. Look to him now.